everybody. It's me, Miss Lisa, and welcome to Stitch Kids. Today, the project we are going to begin is a stuffed Sleepy Bear. Sleepy Bear is made from flannel on the front and the back. Sleepy Bear has a felt face with a felt nose, and he is decorated with embroidery thread using embroidery stitches. To complete this project, you will need a craft kit from the South Huntington Library. Your craft kit includes 2 pieces of flannel, 1 printed and 1 solid, 2 pieces of felt, 1 large and 1 small, a pattern like this, and something new, a piece of tailor's chalk. You will also have in your craft kit a giant pile of polyfiber fill stuffing. You will need to provide your own pins and needles, and you probably have them in a sewing kit that you have already picked up. Your pins and needles may be in your pin pal, like mine are. Have that handy for working on this project. You will also need a pair of scissors. All right, let's get started. You may have noticed when you removed the flannel from your craft kit that the fabric is a little bit wrinkly. You can see there's a crease down the middle and a lot of wrinkles on the sides. The same is true with my pattern fabric here as well. It's a little bit wrinkly. It's very important when you're working with a pattern that the fabric you use is smooth and does not have any wrinkles in it. This way, when you are cutting around your pattern, the pattern will be accurate and the shape you get from your cutting is the shape that you want. So, to make your fabric smooth and wrinkle-free, your grown-up may need to help you iron it. I'm asking that you have a grown-up help you iron your fabric so that you don't burn yourself or burn your fabric. The ironing is very quick and very simple and should not take your grown-up very much time, so you can get right to the fun sewing part. Ironing a piece of flannel is very simple. Lay the flannel onto an ironing board. Take your iron, which is set to the cotton setting, lay it in the middle of the fabric, gently push and pull the iron toward the side of the fabric. Do this going all the way around the piece of fabric until all of the wrinkles are gone. You may need to go over it a couple of times, depending on how wrinkly it is. So now our fabric is nice and smooth and ready to work with. I'm just going to set that one aside, and I'm going to take the wrinkles out of this one. Going to do the same thing, lay it down flat on the ironing board, put the iron in the center, pull the iron toward the edges to press the wrinkles out very slowly, going from the middle all the way out to the ends. I'm going to do a little bit more along this edge closest to me because that is really, really wrinkly. Okay, there we go. When your grown-up is finished ironing, remind your grown-up to turn off the iron and unplug it and put it in a safe place so no one gets hurt. Now our fabric is nice and flat and smooth and ready to work with. Before you begin working with your fabric, you will need to cut your pattern pieces out of the tracing paper. Cut your pattern, cut along the outside of the black line very carefully using your scissors. If you make a mistake, that's okay. Just keep cutting, but cut as carefully as you can around the thick black line. So that your pattern looks like this. Cut the other two pieces, the nose and the face, and set everything aside. Each pattern piece tells you how many pieces of fabric you are going to need. For the body, you will cut 2 pieces in this shape. For the nose, you will cut 1 piece in this shape. For the face, you will cut 1 piece in this shape. So before you begin cutting, pin the pattern to your fabric to hold it in place as you cut. It might be a little tricky with these long pins and these little pieces of pattern, but you can move the pin as you are cutting. There's the nose, and now we'll get the face set up. Move pin pal over here so we can reach our pins. Be sure to keep your pattern as flat as possible on your piece of felt or flannel, and use the pins to secure the pattern tightly in place. We'll set those aside for now, and we will work with the flannel, which is going to be for the body of your Sleepy Bear. If you have a good heavy-duty pair of scissors like this, you can pin both pieces of fabric and your pattern together and cut both at once. If you do not, it is perfectly fine to cut each piece one at a time. Make sure that your fabric is flat and secure the pattern to your fabric with pins all the way around the outside. Just like this. Don't forget the ears up at the top. I think I should probably put one here through the head, and let's see, along the sides of the body also. Okay. Be sure your pattern lies flat on the fabric, and then cut carefully around the outside of your pattern. Go ahead and do that for all of the pieces. 2 pieces of the body, 1 nose, and 1 face. Now we are going to work on Sleepy Bear's face, which means we are going to attach his nose and use embroidery stitches for his eyes and mouth. You should have removed your pattern from your felt face, and you should have removed the pattern from the felt nose and safely stashed your pins back in your pin pal or in another safe place. To attach the nose, decide where you would like the nose to go on the face. You can put it right in the center if you'd like, move it a little bit up toward the top or closer to the bottom. It's up to you. I think I'd like it to be right in the center of his face, and I'm going to secure that nose with a pin, just like that. Don't worry if your pin is longer than the nose, we can stitch around it. Choose a needle that has a large eye We're going to use a needle with a large eye because we are using some embroidery thread, which is nice and sturdy and colorful. You can use your needle threader to help you get the thread through the eye of the needle. Push the wire through the eye of the needle. Put one end of your thread through the wire on the needle threader. Give it a little tug. Pull it all the way through so you have a little tail. Set the threader aside. And now go to the other end of your thread and make a double knot. Loop the thread around your finger, push the little tail through and pull. Loop again and pull very carefully so the knots are on top of each other. To secure the nose to Sleepy Bear's face, I just used a plain whip stitch and I went around the outside of the nose. Whip stitch is very easy. You start by poking through the back of the fabric, through the face, and through the nose, right close to the edge but not too close. You want to be able to see your thread when you make a stitch. Pull tight and then put the needle back in directly across from where it came up first, and then pull gently, not too tight but just tight enough so that it's nice and secure, but you want to be able to see your stitch and not have your stitch disappear into the fabric. So we'll go one more time, leave a little bit of space, and leaving some space here between where you started your stitch and the edge of the nose fabric. Pull gently and then complete the stitch directly across from where the needle came up. There you go. And now continue all the way around the nose until the nose is securely attached to Sleepy Bear's face. When you have reached the end and you have finished your final stitch, turn the face over and tie off your stitches. So you'll find your last stitch, very carefully put the needle under the stitch, pull, leave a little loop, put the needle through the loop to make a knot, pull gently, make sure your knot is secure, and then trim your thread. And there is Sleepy Bear's nose. Now we are ready to do Sleepy Bear's eyes and mouth. Your kit includes a tiny piece of tailor's chalk. This is basically like a crayon. It will leave marks on your fabric, but those marks will eventually wipe off. This is handy to have when you want to make a design on something, but you don't want any lines to show. You just want your thread to show through, but not a felt pen or a Sharpie or anything like that. So, on the right side of Sleepy Bear's face, you may put the eyes and the mouth wherever you would like, drawing very carefully with your tailor's chalk. There's one eye. There's another eye. And I'll put the mouth down here. Looks like I'm drawing on his face with a crayon. But now you can see where I'm going to sew. And I'll finish his mouth right here. There you are. Now you can use any of the colors of embroidery thread you have in your kit. I'm going to go ahead and stick with this dark color because it's already in my needle. All I need to do is make another knot at the end. And I'm going to use a double knot because this is thick thread. And I'm using a thick needle and I don't want the thread to come through the fabric. Okay. Now we are going to use straight embroidery stitches to make the eyes and the mouth. You may start wherever you would like. I'm going to start at the bottom of this eye. I'm going to come up from the back of the fabric and I'm going to make a stitch on the line that I drew with my tailor's chalk. Pull very gently, don't pull too hard because you want to be able to see your thread. Leave a little bit of space to start your second stitch, still following the line you made with the tailor's chalk. Up and down, making a stitch that's pretty much the same length as the first one. And I'm going to continue like that until I get to the end of the eye. Keeping the stitches the same size if I can. And there we go, at the end of the eye. And eventually this tailor's chalk will wipe away. I know you can still see it here, but it will go away, I promise you. Now I'm going to tie a knot on the back, just like I did when making the nose. Go under the last stitch, leave a little loop, put the needle through the loop and pull very gently, but strong enough to make a tight knot. There we go. Now I'm going to do the same thing for the other eye and for the mouth. Remember to make a knot at the other end of your thread so your thread doesn't get pulled through the fabric. Okay. Now I'm ready to start stitching the mouth. I still have some dark thread on my needle, so I'm going to go ahead and knot the end with 2 knots and do as much as I can with the thread that I have. I might run out of thread as I'm stitching, that's okay. If you run out of thread, just reload your needle with the same color and continue. I'm going to start up here by the nose and work my way down to the bottom. Doing the same thing, paying attention to how long my stitches are, trying to keep them all the same length, and following the lines I made from the tailor's chalk. This can be a little tricky to go around the curve. Just take your time. And of course, if you're not happy with the stitch, you can always take the thread off of your needle, pull the stitch out, rethread your needle, and continue. So far, I'm happy with how it's going, so I'm just going to keep stitching along here. Okay, I'm at the end of this side of his smile. I'm going to go ahead and tie off this side by making a knot. the thread. I'm going to re-knot the end of the thread with 2 knots. And finish the other side of the smile, starting here at the bottom of the mouth. I'm still following the line I made with tailor's chalk and keeping my stitches the same size if possible. You can make long stitches or short stitches. Just stick with one of them, whichever one you choose. There we go. Now I'll turn this over. I'll make a knot. That looks a little messy. There we go. And clip the thread. Okay, and there is Sleepy Bear's sleepy face. Now we are ready to attach Sleepy Bear's face to his body. We are going to attach the face to one piece of the body fabric before we put the body fabric together and give him some stuffing. It's easier to make nice clean stitches on something flat rather than trying to sew onto something round like this. So we will do this first. Decide where you would like his face to be. You can make it close to the top if you'd like, down more toward the middle, somewhere in between. It's entirely up to you. And we are going to secure the face to the flannel with pins. Thank you, Pin Pal, for holding the pins for me. That way I can find them when I need them. Let's see. I think maybe, yeah, that should be enough. Make sure it's on there nice and tight. If you feel you need more pins, you can add more pins. Again, we are going to use a needle with a big eye and a needle threader. And you may choose either color of embroidery thread from your kit. I'm going to use the lighter color from my kit to secure the face to the body. So let's push the wire part of the threader through the eye of the needle. Let's put the embroidery thread through the wire. Give it a little tug, pull through so you have a tail. And then add a double knot to the end. You know what, I think this piece of embroidery thread is going to be too big, so I'm going to cut it into smaller pieces. Sometimes, if you work with a piece of thread that is too long, you end up with a knot on the back of your piece while you're sewing. And then you end up spending a lot of time trying to untangle the knot. Let's spend more time sewing and less time untangling knots. Okay. Oh, this doesn't feel good at all. I'm going to add another pin or two. I'm afraid this is going to move while I'm stitching. So let's make the face a little more secure by adding a couple more pins. All right, there we go. That feels better. We're going to sew the face onto the body. We're going to use a simple straight embroidery stitch all around the outside of the face. So the face will look like this. However, if you would like, you may use the same stitch that you used on the nose to secure the face to the body. That would look good too. It's entirely up to you. I'm going to go ahead and stick with the straight embroidery stitch. I'm going to come in from the edge, maybe about 1/4 inch. I'm going to hold the face tight against the body fabric. Decide how long I'd like the stitch to be. Push it back through the face and the felt and pull very gently. Now continue around the outside of the face, trying to keep your stitches the same length and trying to keep them approximately 1/4 inch away from the edge of the felt. Like so. Take your time. This can be a little tricky because you're managing to hold on to a lot of fabric with one hand and work a needle with the other hand. So keep an eye out that you don't get the ear caught underneath or the edge of the fabric. Just take your time. Before you make a stitch, be sure everything is in place and pull gently. And of course, if you do happen to catch the ear while you're sewing, you can always remove the thread from the needle like this and use your needle to pull the stitch out. Then to continue stitching, just rethread your needle with your needle threader. That's okay. Sometimes things happen. And when you leave a little tail of thread like this, it's easy to fix your mistakes. There you go. Okay. Now continue all the way around until you get to the end. I've stitched all around the face. I am ready to add one more stitch. Then I'm going to make a knot on the back. Oops. Looks like I caught one of the pins. Okay. Pull very gently. I'll turn it over. Find your last stitch. Put the needle underneath. Make a loop. And put your needle through the loop. I gotta do that one more time. To make a knot. And then trim your thread. Okay. Now you can remove the pins and put them back in your pin pal or some other safe place where they will stay until you're ready to use them again. I'm going to add the needle to my pin pal too. I'm going to need that for a few more minutes. Okay, now we are ready to attach the two pieces of the body together. Now to do that, we are going to put the right sides of the fabric together. The right side of the fabric is the fabric that has the design that's usually the brightest, or it has your embellishment on it, which in this case is your face. You want to put these two sides together because you are going to sew around the outside and then turn Sleepy Bear inside out. When you turn Sleepy Bear inside out, you want to be sure that the bright colors and the face show on the outside and the stitches that you made show on the inside, or I should say, stay on the inside, where they will be hidden, like these. Okay, so lay the piece of flannel that has the face up in front of you. Take the piece of flannel that has the bright colors, turn it over so the bright colors are touching the face that you just added to the solid color flannel. Match up the edges as best you can, keeping the two pieces of flannel as flat as you can. And now pin both pieces together, going all the way around the outside. Let's take a minute now and we'll do that. You can put your pins as close together as you would like. The more pins you put in, the more secure your fabric will stay. And of course, once you start sewing, if you realize that you need more pins, you can stop and you can add more as you go. This part of Sleepy Bear, sewing the two body pieces together, takes a long time. I don't expect you to do it all at once. It's a project you can work on over many days. It's a project you could save for a rainy day or a weekend when you don't have anything else to do. Okay, now the two pieces are pinned together. Before you begin sewing, there's something very important that you need to know about these two pieces of fabric. Your pattern says at the bottom, leave open for stuffing. That means you are going to leave the bottom of the body open so you can put the stuffing inside of it. In order to remember that you need to leave the body open, you can make a mark with your tailor's chalk. It's kind of hard to see on the light colored fabric, so I think I will make a mark here. And this will remind me not to keep sewing once I get from here to there or from there to here, to keep this part open so I can turn the body right side out and add the stuffing. Okay, now you can set your tailor's chalk aside, and we're going to use a different kind of thread for this part of the project. We're just going to use a regular all-purpose nylon thread. You will have a little spool of it in your kit. Cut a long piece off and find a needle that has a smaller eye. You don't need to use the thicker needles with the thick eyes with this kind of thread. Use your needle threader to get this little piece of thread through the little eye of the needle. And pull it through. Okay. Now, instead of leaving a tail like we usually do with our embroidery thread, I'm going to match up the ends of the nylon thread and tie them together. Put the two ends together as best you can. Wrap them around your finger, push the two tails through, and tie a knot. I'm going to use a double knot just to be safe. Oops, I missed. Try that again. There we go. Double knot. So now both pieces of thread are tied together. In this case, if you make a mistake with one of your stitches, you won't be able to go back and take it out. But because you are working with the wrong side of the fabric, any mistakes that you make should be covered up by the right sides of the fabric when you turn the fabric right side out. To make a running stitch, you're going to pull your thread through both pieces of fabric. Push the needle into both pieces of fabric, maybe about 1/2 inch away from where your original stitch started. The needle is poked all the way through both pieces, and now you're going to push the needle through both pieces of flannel almost and come out almost at the spot where you started. And now pull. It looks a little bit like a straight embroidery stitch, but you'll see that your stitch has some thread sticking out in the middle. You're going to do the same thing as you continue all the way around the outside. You're going to go about maybe 1/4 inch past the end of this stitch, this last stitch, push the needle through both pieces of flannel, and then push it back through at the middle of this stitch. And then pull. This is called a running stitch because your stitches are running together. Okay, let me just demonstrate. Down, back up. Partway through this other stitch, you can see here where the measurement is. And then pull. Okay. This is the stitch I suggest that you use for putting Sleepy Bear together. However, if this stitch is too difficult for you, you may use a whip stitch, which is simply bringing your needle up through the fabric from the back, pull the stitch tight, and then do the same thing going all along the edge of the fabric, like so. So you can see there's a difference between the running stitch, which is straight, and the whip stitch is binding your fabric together and kind of closing the edge. You may choose whichever stitch you would like. I would suggest when you choose one, stick with it for the rest of your project and continue with that stitch all the way around the sides, the ears, the top of the head, the other side, down to your chalk mark here at the bottom. When you have finished sewing all the way around the outside of your bear, remove all of the pins and put your pins in a safe place. You can put them back in your pin pal or put them in a little dish to keep them from falling on the floor. I know I say this every time, but it's very important. We don't want anyone to get hurt by stepping on sewing supplies. Okay. When all of the pins have been removed, you are going to turn your bear inside out. So the right sides of the fabric will be on the outside. You do this by opening up the part of the project that you left unsewed. Reach inside and grab one of the ears by pushing an ear into your hand that's on the inside and just pull through like this. And keep working at it until both ears are right side out. And push the fabric as much as you can so that your bear looks like the shape that you had in your pattern. You may be able to see your seams a little bit. That's okay, don't worry about it. And kind of run your finger along the seam, along the sewn part, making sure that the fabric is nice and even and as smooth as you can get it. and turned all the way right side out. There we go, that looks nice and smooth. I'm gonna run my finger along there. Okay. And now Sleepy Bear is right side out, and Sleepy Bear is ready for stuffing. Your kit included a giant handful of polyfiber fill stuffing. This is the fun part. Take a little bit of the stuffing, kind of roll it up into a little ball, reach inside Sleepy Bear, and push that little ball of stuffing up into his ear. Like that, so that it's nice and soft. Push it as far as you can with your finger, all the way to the end of the ear. You don't want to put too much stuffing so that the seams look like they're about to split, but you would like to have enough stuffing in there so that the ear feels solid and soft at the same time. Think of your favorite plushies at home. That's kind of what you want him to feel like. Okay, so there's one ear. Then we will do the next ear the same way. Just reach your fingers all the way up in there, push the stuffing to the end of the ear. And this does take some time, so don't worry, you don't have to do this fast. There's no hurry. If it seems like it's a little lumpy or uneven, squeeze it with your fingers to kind of work out any bumps, and you can feel where you might need a little bit more stuffing. Okay, so when the ears are finished, then you can take bigger pieces of stuffing to stuff the body. You'll do the same thing, push the stuffing up as far as you can and try to get it even by pushing it around with your hand on the inside or squeezing from the outside to get the stuffing to be evenly distributed inside the bear's body. Okay. And continue stuffing until you've used up as much as you want or you've used everything in your pile. Okay, you should be nice and full, like that. Okay, now we're ready to sew up the bottom of our Sleepy Bear. For this, you're going to need your pins, again, from your Pin Pal, a needle, and your thread.
This part can be a little tricky, so if you need to stop and start over, that is just fine. It's hard to get this right on the first try. But what we're going to do is fold some of the open fabric at the bottom of Sleepy Bear over. So we're going to fold the plain side and fold the pattern side. Sleepy Bear is very slippery. So you're folding the edges of the fabric in toward the stuffing. Then you are going to pinch these folded pieces of fabric together and use a pin to pin them so they can be held together while you are stitching. But you can see how now that I've folded and pinned this side, this part has come apart, so I kind of have to refold, push that stuffing back down, fold and pinch. And then pin. You have to pin through a lot of fabric here. Be very careful. And again, this side came open as I was folding and pinching over there, so got to refold and repinch. And now pin. Okay, there we go. Now let's turn it over and we'll see if we got that pretty straight. That looks pretty good. If it isn't straight, simply take out the pins and try it again to get it as straight as possible. Okay, now we're ready to stitch. So for these stitches, we will need the needle with a small eye because we are going to be using the nylon thread. Pull out a length of your thread from your little makeshift spool that you have in your kit. You can use your needle threader if that's helpful to get this thread through that little tiny eye. Okay, pull, and then put your needle threader away in a safe place. And like we sewed around the outsides, we're going to double up this thread, matching up the two ends of the thread, and then making a double knot at the end. Okay, there we go. That should hold. Pull it nice and tight. Okay, now we're ready to start sewing the bottom of our Sleepy Bear together. This is going to be kind of like a whip stitch, and it is going to hide inside this seam where the two pieces of fabric come together. It's called a hidden stitch. It can be a little bit difficult to do. I've noticed in the past when I've done this stitch, my hidden stitch is not really so hidden, but we'll try to hide it as best we can in between these two pieces of fabric. So when we unpin Sleepy Bear and puff up the filling, it should look like there is no stitch there. Okay, so to begin your hidden stitch, put your needle inside the solid fabric where you are going to start sewing and push it all the way through. Push the tail of your thread into the little gap between the two fabrics so that it disappears. If some thread is showing when you're finished, we can go back and snip that, but for now we're just going to try to hide it. There we go. So while you are pinching the two pieces of fabric together, you're going to sew. I'm going to grab the printed fabric with my needle, push it through a little bit of the solid fabric. You can see I'm grabbing just a little bit of both fabrics, and I'm going to pull all the way through. And I'll do that from this end all the way to the other end, trying to keep the stitches as small and as close together as possible because I want them to be hidden. So you're kind of reaching inside the fabric and grabbing the inside of the other fabric, if that makes sense. You're sort of sewing inside this little, I guess it would be like a valley between the two types of fabric. Don't worry about going fast. This is a really tough stitch, and it takes lots of practice to get good at it. I'm not even that good at it, but I'm willing to practice. And I'm also willing to take my time. So if you can't do it in just one sitting, set this aside and work on it another time. And if it frustrates you, just stop and come back to it another time. Sewing is supposed to be fun and relaxing. The other great thing about hand sewing is that nobody's hand sewn projects look exactly the same. what you're going to end up with is uniquely yours and represents your sewing style. All right, so continue until you get to the other end, and then we'll put the finishing touches on our Sleepy Bear. When you've reached the end of your hidden stitches, we're going to try to hide that final stitch as well. So put your needle in through the solid, or I'm sorry, in through the patterned and out through the solid fabric. Pull, leave a little loop, put your needle through the loop and pull again to make a knot. And now we're going to slide the needle underneath the last stitch that you made. Pull it as tight as you can. And now clip it as close as you can to the fabric so that little piece of thread is hidden. Let's put our needle back in Pin Pal and remove the pins. Put those in a safe place too. And give Sleepy Bear a little squeeze and a little massage. And now Sleepy Bear is all finished.
I hope you enjoyed working on your Sleepy Bear, and I hope you'll join me in a couple of weeks when we will be making a beanbag bullfrog out of fleece. Thank you so much again, and take care.